Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Jez Clark. I'm one of the co-founders of Eden Smith Group. We're the exclusive data recruitment and staffing partner to Big Data London. And I've been featured in the CDO playbook and data-driven transformation for our thought leadership around recruiting in niche talent pools and where there's a skills shortage in the market. What we're trying to do today is just to give you a bit of insight how what other approaches you can take to actually how to build a team when there's real challenges, market challenges. So just throwing it out there to everybody, if you could put your hand up for me if you're actually looking to build a team or you're hiring people at the moment. Matt, can you run around with the scanner, please? No, I'm just joking. Yeah, so that's quite a lot. And put your hand up if you're actually looking for an opportunity. Right, so that's really interesting because actually there's more people raise their hands actually trying to build a team. So it gives you an indication of the market itself actually just in this one row. So what I plan to do is I'm going to run you through some components. And what it is we call this workforce re-engineering. There's nothing in here that you probably haven't seen before, but basically it's a reminder of the kind of approach you should take before you automatically jump to external recruitment. So the way we look at it as a business is you look at your capability and the capabilities that you have in your organisation. So what I'm talking about here are basically technical skills, professional attributes and personal competencies of your workforce. Tell me or raise your hand if you know this in your business or you've ever mapped this kind of information about your workforce. That's exactly as I expected. So you probably don't know exactly what skills you do have in your business. Now what you've got here is a diagram showing you a list of all the professional attributes and competencies of a specific skill set or job family with data governance, data quality and data analysis through an entry level up to a head of. And showing you basically it's like a visual career development plan. So this is the one thing that we look at first when you go and you need to try and build a team. Look at your actual capabilities you have in your organisation and see what you can do with those. The next step we take is, once you understand that, before you go to the external market and start recruiting, who can you move? Who's interested in moving around in your organisation, or who do you think is capable of actually filling some of those gaps to start with? And this is a thought process, so it's an awareness and thought process you should take before we go to recruitment. Internal mobility is key. What you can do here once you've mapped your organisation is you can actually understand, if you pick, like we have in this scenario, and just to give you a statistic, storytelling up to this year wasn't actually considered a competency or an attribute or a skill. Last year, according to the Industrial Revolution report. However, this year, 25% of data leaders said that this is critical. And in this particular example, what we've got is the actual divisions within a business. We have the CDO and data engineering, data governance, but it's someone sitting in the CTO that's got very strong storytelling skills that could be moved into the CDO or the Chief Data Office. So think about internal mobility. The next thing that we look at is when you understand the capabilities of your organisation and pretty much what you want, you would then look at training. Because once you've trained your staff in whatever they might need, then you can go back to internal mobility and move them into the areas that you need there. So already there's a lot of stuff going on before we're actually going out to the market, or consider these as the first part of a talent acquisition strategy. The report said this year that 57% of businesses went straight to upskilling their workforce before doing anything else. However, 75% of the market said that the biggest challenge was getting the budget to do the upskilling. So you can see the paradox there. Bit of a problem. But technical skills can be taught, so that's something you can do through a number of different ways. The professional attributes can be learnt, and the competencies can be developed. So this is something that you should look at first in your business before we go straight out to the market. Raise your hands if you have an actual succession plan in your business that's documented. I think one person put their hand up. Don't you find that incredible? So basically, when someone leaves your organisation, the first thing you do is go and, you've got no idea how to plug that gap. And ultimately, raise your hand if the first thing you would do would be go to the external market to try and recruit someone to fill it. That's not bad. How about train someone to do the job? Okay, move someone from another department? All right, so there's a few people in here that actually got some of this stuff going on, which is great. But succession's really, really key, because it's so much easier to actually, when you know and you have a plan with someone that can actually fill that position, should that person leave, then not only does it give you some comfort, you know that there's no distraction to your business. So our advice is to all organisations to don't be reactive about this stuff. Put a proactive succession plan in place for your business. But you can only really do that once you've looked at all the capabilities and you can see what kind of skills and attributes and competencies you have in your company. And try and think about 12 to 18 months ahead. We know from being at the coalface of the industry that people are moving around between 18 months, about 18 months, 12 months to 18 months, because they come into an organisation, they're trained, they learn new skills, and then they're headhunted, or they move, or they decide to go to another organisation. So this thing right now is absolutely key, because the market's still evolving. There's a lot of new job families popping up, a lot of new skills, there's lots of hype. We hear about data science and all this sort of stuff. But if you don't have a succession plan in place, you're in trouble, because you're continually trying to recruit for a skill that's really, really scarce. And everybody here has a challenge with that, I'm quite sure. You can't please everyone with succession planning, because there could be 2 or 3 people that are lined up for that position if someone leaves or they move on. However, what it does do, if that person leaves, they're not happy, they thought they might get that job, is they then fall into, if they leave your organisation, a potential alumni network. Raise your hand if you keep in touch with all of the people that have left your business. That's not bad. That's not bad, actually. I know of an organisation that invites every leaver to their Christmas party every year, and they've re-recruited from that pool of talent every 2 or 3 years. It might not be volumes of people, but actually it does save you an awful lot of money if you just keep in touch. So succession planning is something you should definitely have in your armoury. Brand. Now, brand isn't just an external thing for an organisation, it's internal as well. And we do a lot of work around this, specifically in data, because a lot of businesses don't really know what the data function does, why it's there, what it's doing. So if the team that you're trying to build internally has a brilliant brand in your business, then of course other people in the organisation want to join it. When they hear about things going on there, they're really, really keen and go, well, what's going on over there? I'd actually like to join the data team. So internal brand is key. So don't make the team you're trying to recruit into be the basement team. That's not a good way to go about things. And try and find the quick wins. We worked with a customer in Germany, actually, that she gave us a great example. Lighthouse principle, she calls it. And what she does with the data team is she find a POC in there, or a few around the organisation, and she'll spin up these really, really fast, quite high impact projects. And she calls them like the lighthouse, shining the light around the organisation, which is basically building the brand, internal brand, for the team she's trying to recruit into for the future. So this is a great thing that you can do, and a lot of data professionals will do this anyway, because it's really, really hard to get culture and everything fired up in an organisation of a certain size if you're not doing this sort of thing. But you can apply this to how you build your team as well. And then share the successes, share the work. Communicate everything that's going on in that team you're trying to build across the whole business quite frequently, to say, look, there's some really exciting stuff going on here, there's new skills, there's training, there's new technology and all this sort of thing, and look at the impact that we're having and the results we've had so far, and come and join us in a year, or let us know if you want to join the team. Your external brand. It often fascinates me that not many people understand the impact of onboarding. Your first touch, or the first piece of communication, or the first visual you see about an organisation who's trying to recruit, is the start of that onboarding journey. So if your external brand isn't strong, then you will have trouble with that. If you've ever damaged it in the past by, potentially not doing things right, or maybe not communicating with people that you've tried to recruit, or giving feedback, whatever it might be, working with potential agencies that aren't very, very good, that can really, really hit your external brand. And given the amount of people that are being contacted on a daily basis about jobs, you can imagine it. Now, I know of companies that will have 10, 15 agency suppliers on their preferred supplier list, and I talk to customers about this all the time. I say to them, does every one of those suppliers know how to communicate your brand? Because every recruiter in every one of those businesses will be contacting 50 to 100 people a week. So you can do the maths yourself. If you've got 15 suppliers, 100 recruiters, 100 people being contacted every day or every week. It adds up and adds up, and then they're all giving mixed messages to market. So external brand is very, very important. Try and be an employer of choice. A few examples here of how you can do that. When you are going out to market, if you're recruiting directly, then you make sure that you have a very, very good statement of fact about the role that you're trying to fill. What's good about it, who it's for, the impact it's having on the organisation, the opportunity, the training and technology that you can learn. Run hackathons. Really, really low cost, effective way of sharing what your business is doing and attracting new people to your company. You can do it with other brands, you can do it with other businesses in your group maybe, you can partner up with agencies like ours to do this sort of stuff, and they're so successful for hiring talent. Come to conferences like Big Data London, but encourage your teams to do the same. And attend meetups. We run a meetup every month, and that's just us, and I know that there's meetups pretty much every night in London where you can actually take your teams to those meetups. They'll network with lots of people, and that's a great way of understanding, because it only takes one conversation and you can make a hire just through that, but only if your external brand is pumping. So you've got to get that message out there, and you can't just do it by splashing an ad somewhere or whatever that might be. Alignment. Before you do anything, you have to align with the market. We talked about this last year at Big Data London. I'm going to give you an example in a second, but this is a classic. I don't know if you know, but Eden Smith sponsors the VIP lounge, and it's basically a place for some of the speakers and press and some of the chief data officers to sit and prepare their presentations or catch up with work whilst they're here learning about new things. But we did some analysis, and the pie chart on the left are all of the job titles that went through the VIP lounge last year over 2 days. There are about 200 in total, but they're the different job titles. But actually, when we actually did the analysis to look at the types of people that went through the lounge, we could map them very simply into 6 job families. And this is what alignment's all about. If you're a business and you're trying to recruit, understand what the market has, what's available to you, where it is, how much it's going to cost, or those people are going to cost to hire, and be aligned before you start to build your role profiles. Because all too often, myself and Matt and the team at Eden Smith, we see these job vacancies come through to us. Can you help us with this? Completely obscure job title, skills that we've probably never heard sometimes, but nothing about the job family, what it's trying to achieve, the level of the role in the organisation, the brand, what you're trying to achieve as an organisation and how that contributes to the corporate objective, the employer group, the data team, the data family, what data's trying to do for the organisation, what's that key thing, and nothing about actual technical capabilities or the attributes of what you're looking for. But you can't do that unless you know exactly what you want, and even if you know what you want, has the market got to offer, or are those people available in the market to offer you? So be aligned. Internships. Now I'm going to hand over to Lucy Lynch. Lucy Lynch runs our graduate scheme. She's our head of graduate partnerships. We run a data science graduate scheme called Nurture. And I'm just going to hand over to her for a second. She's just going to tell you a little bit about what that's all about. But as you've seen at the moment, we've got 5 or 6 things we've discussed there, components of workforce re-engineering before we're even talking about recruitment. So I'll just hand over to Lucy for a second. Thanks, Lucy.
Thanks, Jez.
No worries.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, okay.
Wonderful. So the power of internships. So it's pretty powerful, upon words. But I'm really delighted to be here today because 2 years ago we were here and we launched the Nurture Program. And this has been a dream of Matt and Jez's, where we really wanted to bridge the gap between academia and industry. And working with students and with universities and customers and being able to fulfill and to build up these teams over the last few years has been an incredible opportunity for us. So we're now working with 16 universities, and here are just a few of them. We started the Nurture Programme with one university, Salford, who are our champion university, and we started with them as they began their data science masters in 2016. They started with 20 students, and now over the last 3 years they now have 2 intakes, and they have almost 80 students a year, which has been incredible. And so I facilitate all of their data science internships throughout the year, and I also work with these other universities as well. So when we kicked off Nurture a couple of years ago, we spoke about how Eden Smith were pioneering, and we were really trying to bridge this gap, and we were doing it with courage. And we were talking about in the market that it takes courage to be a pioneer, to be a trailblazer. And sometimes, I'd sit in my office at home and I'd think, am I the only person that really wants to talk about internships? Because I found it quite hard to reach a market that wanted to listen and could really see the value. And I have to say, I'm really delighted that over the last few years that change has happened. And what we've been able to do is build teams with interns, and we've helped over 150 students bridge that gap between academia and industry. We've helped 65 customers build their data science teams, and we've helped 16 universities really align skillfully their university content to ensure that it is aligned with current business needs. Which I think is highly important. So the whole point of our business, of the nature of the Nurture service, if you like, is that we want to create a generative approach to this. We want to collaborate, and we want to work together with people. We want to engage, and we want to make sure that no one's left behind with this, and so that everybody, we work with companies, we work with the SMEs, we work with fintechs, we work with charities, and we work with some great organisations. And just quickly, I'd like to tell you about a story of a lady that joined the programme at Bradford University last year. She came from Kosovo. She'd done a degree in computer science, and she went to Bradford University. It's academically excellent. It's got some great campus facilities. And she joined there, and she just graduated with a distinction, which is fantastic. And she did the Nurture programme, and she asked me to find her a project with a company that was doing something for good. So I found her an amazing company, a renewable energy company. She worked with them for 3 months, and she's now just completed a series of interviews, and hopefully they're going to make an offer and hire her permanently, which is amazing. She went through quite a challenging time over the 3 months. Her mother sadly passed away, who was her inspiration to come here and to do this challenge. But she stuck with it, and she's come through it, and I'm so proud and so pleased for her. And that basically, I feel that what we're doing is that we're giving lots and lots of opportunity to the next generation of data scientists and to IoT specialists that will be able to help build a better future for tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucy. I really wanted Lucy to share that with you because actually the internship programs, can you put your hand up if any of you are running internship programs in your business? So that's not too bad, actually. We often see it in bigger companies, but not so much smaller ones. And actually bridging that gap between academia and industry is something that's quite close to our heart, but it's also very difficult to do. You'll see lots of beauty parades of massive corporations that are connected with big London universities, but actually what happens is they go there for a day and then nothing happens after that. And that's the challenge. And through these programs, you can actually recruit talent for the future. So if you don't have one, then I suggest you think about this sort of stuff, because it forms another component. And there's people here today that we've placed as a result of running through the program, but it forms another component before we even get to, and I just want to reiterate this, we've been speaking for nearly 20 minutes, we haven't actually talked about recruitment yet at all. So you do have to change your mindset in a skills scarce market. Think about the other things you can do before you go out to try and recruit. Now, just a few statistics, bit of feedback there. Apparently we're being told, I think this was gone, 100,000 new jobs in data by 2020. Interestingly, 30% of people in data have under 3 years experience. 30%. That's a big statistic if you think about it, because these are people that are learning new skills. And ultimately what happens here is when you have that amount of people under 3 years experience, this happens. 38% of the workforce only stay in your organisation for less than a year. And that's because they come into your business, you spend a lot of time and effort recruiting them, you train them, and then they go. Because there's another business out there that's either offering more money or they're offering to train on new technology. And given the fact that I know from having been here for the last 2 days, when I walked into the conference, and we've been this partner for 4 years now, I didn't recognise half of the technology providers out there. So it's changing on a quarterly and 6 monthly basis, what these people are learning. So that's why you mustn't think about any of this stuff from a technical point of view. It needs to be a little bit more holistic. So, some suggestions here. If you're trying to build a data team, don't use a generalist agency. I've worked for a generalist agency. I've been in recruitment since 1997. IT recruitment across the whole of Europe. And basically, a lot of it is based on keyword searching. And I'm sure I'm not the only person that's thinking that. That's what you think that you're paying this massive fee for to an agency, and you don't really feel like you got the value and blah, blah, blah. I could talk about that for quite a while. But in data, bearing in mind there's probably 6 job families there that we can actually put most people into if we work hard at it. A lot of the same skills cross 4 of those job families. So if you talk to a generalist IT recruitment business about trying to build you a data team, there's going to be a lot of a lot of profiles that aren't really looking very well matched for what you're trying to achieve, because you could be a data analyst, you could be a data scientist, and you could be a data engineer, and there all might be an element of SQL coding or ECL or a bit of data cleansing, whatever it might be, but they could be on every single job spec. So someone that doesn't understand this industry is really, really going to fail, I think, personally going to fail, and they're not really going to help you, and then you're not going to get value for money or the service. Get an expert, and we'll try and avoid this happening for you when you go to external market. And the other thing that happens when you do this, and actually you guys in the audience can actually help educate the external market, because a lot of hands went up there for businesses that are trying to build a team. If the more you use agencies or recruitment companies that don't understand the market, the communication that goes out to the audience gets very blurred. And it's only the specialists that try and rein that back in to try and re-educate everybody. And I'm not just talking about data, this could be in whatever discipline or function in your organisation. You should really consider specialists. Big preferred supply lists of generalist agencies are not doing anybody any favours. Try and pick them. If there's a skills shortage or a scarcity, then basically you should be using a specialist. Obviously I've recommended us, but I would do, wouldn't I? However, I'm very excited actually today because I'm going to make an introduction to Julian Elliott. Julian Elliott's been a Chief Data Officer for many, many years and has recruited over plus 150 data people in his career. And it's easy for me to talk about recruitment from a recruiter's perspective, but the power in this is that you're going to hear it from a customer that's done it. And we wanted to pass on this thought leadership and some advice and tips. So I'll hand over to Julian, because this is about, if you want to recruit data teams, the likelihood is you'll need a data leader to do that, and we're launching executive search for data leaders at Eden Smith, and Julian's going to help you with that, help us with that, and he's going to talk to you now. So I'll hand over to Julian.
All right, many thanks for that, Jez. So my name is Julian Elliott. I have led data in 3 FTSE companies and then a global company after that, and now I run my own consultancy. I think it is as Jez has said, a lot of this is going to be common sense, and we're going to be talking about doing a lot of things before you get to the recruitment stage, and that is incredibly important to remember. This is common sense. There's not that much rocket science here. So what I'm going to share with you today is just a few different things. First of all, the candidate experience. How do you set up for success across your executive and get that alignment? What foundations and preparations should you be putting in place before you go out to the market? The resourcing strategies, the options that you have there, and just some pointers from my own experience on how to achieve success. The first thing I would always start with is a candidate experience. If you do this, you'll definitely be in the top half of people out there recruiting. Most organisations, when they recruit, have a very internal focus. They say, oh yeah, we've got a role description, we've got a problem we need to solve, let's get somebody in with a pulse as soon as possible. Ideally, they've done a bit of SQL or C++ in their background. Flipping that around and thinking about how you would want to be recruited, as Jez has talked about, the employer brand and the power of those touch points. Make sure that you deliver across these bullet points. So candidates expect, and candidates will have choices here. If they're talking to you, they're probably talking to somebody else. If you run a better process that makes them feel valued, and that you understand data and their own specific career journey, they're much more likely to accept an offer from you at the end, even if it's for a lower salary than a competing organisation. So get this internal alignment, get the clarity. On the role descriptions, be specific. So even if you have to talk about data priorities, where you are at the moment, that doesn't need to be in a bullet point form. You can do that in preamble in a job description, talking about where your company is on its data journey and where you want to go to. That really helps your candidates get a feel for what you're trying to achieve. The other thing is to be very honest about where you are, because it's a very poor candidate experience if you tell somebody you're very sophisticated, you've got MDM sorted, all the metadata's perfect, data governance was put in place 4 years ago, and there are no data quality problems in your entire company. And they come in and they find that not a single one of those things is true. That's very disheartening, and it probably ends up you recruiting the wrong type of person. You probably wanted somebody who could come in and do those things. In fact, you've got somebody who's come in who's thinking they're all in place and wants to do data science on dirty data, which isn't going to work. Make sure the stakeholders are informed. So that means the internal stakeholders. You know, if the senior data exec is not going to report into the IT department, better make sure the IT department and ideally the CIO and CTO are quite aligned behind that and will support this individual. And then finally, just run a very well defined and efficient process. Be very clear to the candidates when things are going to happen and why things are going to happen, and make sure there's expertise inside that. And then there's something about the executives, the existing leaders of the business. What can they do to tilt the table to make success more favourable? The first thing is to be really clear about what these people want from the new executive, the new data leader that's going to join their business. Be clear on the priorities and their perspective on the opportunities. Equally, be very clear on who's going to be involved in the process. Obviously, the hiring manager is going to be involved. But it's quite off-putting for candidates if they then, at the final stage of the interview, say, oh, by the way, we need you to meet another 4 members of the global exec. The CFO needs to see you, the CXO needs to see you, and so does the HR director. Be clear about that up front. Having sponsorship for more than one person around the top table is very important, and candidates will value that. So they will be expecting to meet at least 2 people for senior roles. Having them meeting 6, as one media company tried to do to somebody I know recently, is probably going to be very off-putting, and it's going to make that candidate question whether the ownership of data is really where the reporting line is on the paper. So get that clarity up front. And another way to get that clarity, if the organisation has had a distributed data function, hasn't had a centre of excellence type model, is to think about employing an experienced interim, maybe for a short piece of work, 1 month to 3 months, to create or update a data strategy, assess where the risks are, put in place some mitigation against them. I'm not talking about the narrow regulatory risks, but the wider risks that we face in the space of data, and generate a short list of priorities for data. This is incredibly important because it gives you something to talk to the candidates about during interview. If your priority is going to be enhancing your CRM or your e-commerce site, you want to be able to talk to the candidates about that. You don't want to be talking to them about a theoretical database structure from a relational or object-oriented data space that they learnt about 20 years ago when they're at college. And again, doing the preparation, for example, the HR director is not normally going to be very familiar with what data capabilities are inside the company, but they need to have a understanding of where that is. And they can rely on their colleagues to lead those discussions during the process, but make sure there is that clarity. So the systems, the tools and the teams that are already in place. And we've already talked about this reporting line, because there's no right answer for a senior data leader. Depending on where the organisation is, the sector it sits in, what its next natural steps are on its data journey, that will depend where these reporting lines need to be. And so the focus might be very defensive and regulatory, for example, focusing on data governance and data quality, or if those foundations are already in place and have been for some time, it might be very much about exploiting AI and machine learning in a very agile and iterative environment to drive innovation. But be clear to the candidates what resources will report into them on day one and how that might migrate over time according to the operating model. And finally, something that is actually a big problem. You'll often find that the role spec has not been agreed amongst the key stakeholders, and that unravels during the recruitment process when the candidate starts to ask follow-up questions. So that is really, really important to have that totally nailed. So, just to make sure you're still awake, I'm going to ask a quick question. Who here is old enough to have used Unix? Okay, I'm not being ageist, but there's some young people who put their hands up. That's a bit scary. Okay, so Bill Joy, he was a founder of Sun Microsystems. He worked on early versions of Unix. More recently, he also gave the world, or contributed to giving the world, Java, which is probably embedded in your smartwatches and your cars today. Bill was an incredibly smart individual, not just one of the most talented computer scientists that's ever lived, but he thought a lot about people and the value that talented people could deliver. And he was firmly of the opinion that value of people far exceeds their cost to the business if you get the right hires in place. And early on in his career, he stated, no matter who you are, most of the smartest people work for somebody else. That was true back then, and it's true now. It doesn't matter if you're Google, or Netflix, or Facebook, or Amazon, or the BBC, or Eden Smith. Most of the smartest people work for somebody else. So that means the probability that the best candidate for a given role is inside your organisation is quite low. And if you expand that thinking, even that the candidate is inside your current sector or your current country, that might be quite low. So that leads us on to the question, how do we find these best candidates if they're not in our company, if they're not in our sector, and possibly not even in our country? So let's just talk about 3 common approaches that one might use. First of all, internal resourcing teams. Now, if you're at a scale and you have a data team that are at a scale and you have an internal team that regularly recruit data people, for example, Facebook here in the UK, that is a great option. I'm going to skip to number 3 here, which is talking about generalist executive search. These companies normally specialise in roles in, I don't know, let's say 100k or 120k plus. So they're not going to be able to give you an end-to-end service. So if it's important for you to be able to do things like internships and candidates who might be technical specialists earlier on in their career, these generalist executive search agencies probably can't do that. But if you're a very international company and your next data leader could come from Australia or North America or any part of Europe or even Asia, then going to one of these well-known global firms does make sense. Which leaves us the middle option, the specialist executive search company. So if you're here in the UK and you want to find data people, this is actually probably your best option, because you don't have to have that data expertise. These guys already have deep expertise inside the data market. They can reach out. Their existing network already finds those people, and they're already connected to those individuals, and they can help you by doing the types of thing that Jez talked about before you even get to recruitment, and make sure that you are set up for success. So you just need to think about having these discussions with HR and procurement to say, well, wait a minute, the fees for doing this are X. The value that somebody can deliver is Y. Hopefully Y is 10 to 100 to even 1,000 times bigger. And that's a discussion you need to be able to have in order to make sure that you can pick the right option for you. So just to recap on some of my own experience, this thing about having the internal alignment and the clear priorities, if you get that right, you're probably going to be in the top quartile of recruitment processes that our candidates are going through. So it's literally applying common sense and doing a bit of pre-work. Making sure the stakeholders that the candidates are going to meet are well informed really helps to ensure success. Having that proactive partner with a dynamic range, you can find you that range of candidates, the people who are more academic, the people who are more technical, or the people who are more business focused is very important. And this efficient process that runs like the beat of a drum, very, very important for candidates to go through that. That level of clarity is really appreciated. I'm conscious that most people won't want to talk about hiring their next data leader in an open Q&A. So for the next hour, I'm going to be on the Eden Smith stand, which is stand 227 for the next hour. If you want to come and talk to me about this, then very happy to do so. I'm now going to hand back to the delicious, the delectable, and the highly dynamic Mr. Jez Clark.
Delicious. Never been explained as that before. Thank you, Julian. Yeah, so awesome. So thank you so much for that, because I think an audience like you guys need to hear it from a customer that's done it, and the benefits of working with people that actually understand the industry and also back up everything that I'm saying. So what we have now is a strategy to go and build your team for the future, or the components of the main priority components that will help you do so. And whether you go top down or left to right, they're all equally important. But actually some of these things will save you an awful lot of time. And it will give you a much better approach to how you feel about building teams for the future when something like this happens again, or there's a new set of skills that are coming up, or a new way of doing things, or anything like that. So I'm going to do a bit of a recap. I think we're slightly ahead of time, but we did want to have some bit of questions, bit of Q&A. But just to go over this again, understand the capability of the workforce in your organisation. First thing you really, really need to look at, and I really don't think many businesses do actually understand that. Even us as a smaller company, I'm sure there are skills in the organisation. In fact, I'll give you an example. It happened to Matt and I when we first set up Eden Smith 4 years ago. We hired Nick, and we hired Nick as a data science recruiter, and he got so heavily involved in learning about data science. He came in after one weekend, and we said, how was your weekend? He said, yeah, brilliant. I said, what did you do? He said, well, I was coding in Python. And I was like, but Nick, you've been in recruitment for 8 years. And he went, I know, but I just love it. And then he started learning SQL. And then he started really getting involved with all of the vendors and started to understand the technology. Within about 3 months of that first conversation, we moved Nick into a technical role, and now he heads up our emerging markets and consulting division, because we do data strategy and data platform design and build and stuff with some of these partners. But that was a real awakening for us, because if I'd have just pigeonholed Nick into that data science recruitment role and said, yeah, do you know what, you can expand and go and build a team and all this sort of stuff, he wouldn't have been fulfilled as an individual. And it's actually a fact that the closer you bridge individuals' home lives to their work lives, your retention is so much better from your existing workforce. So understand your capabilities and the competencies, invest in training in your people, calibrate and align with the market, speak to a specialist, and then talk to them about, let them help you build your role profiles. Don't just think, I've got this amazing idea, that's what the role is, they're the skills I want, and then think that you're going to get massive ROI on your recruitment fee, because the likelihood is you either won't recruit or you'll be spending 3 to 5 months trying to do it. And in that time, you probably could have trained someone in your organisation to do this stuff and saved the whole lot of time. Build your employer brand that will support the talent acquisition strategy and recruit with confidence. So it's great. It's a great place to be when you know that the market thinks what you're doing is great. You know that you could put a potential employee to talk to some of your existing members of staff and know that they would all go, yeah, it's brilliant here, that's what we're doing here, we're doing this, it's a great place to join, and all that sort of stuff. They will do the job for you. At the meetups, at the conferences and stuff like that, if you encourage your team members to get there. So that's a bit of a recap. And build a bulletproof succession plan, for God's sake, because no one does it. It's so important. And actually your staff will feel more fulfilled knowing that there's one in place as well, because they'll feel like they've got a journey. And there's lots of things that you can do to do that. The software that I showed you earlier was one of our partners. It's a great piece of mapping software. It doesn't take long to do. You can literally import data into it and go, wow, look what I've got in the organisation at the moment. So that's a quick recap. I hope you have found that useful. I'm going to go to some questions, open to questions for any of us. Anyone got any questions for me? And thank you very much for your time, by the way. Yes. That's a really great question, actually. Yeah, okay, yeah, sorry. So, oh yeah, do you want to send it in a microphone, actually? So.
How important do you think academic qualifications are these days?
All right, okay, so my personal opinion, highly important, but very dependent on what and who the type of person is that you're trying to recruit. So that the role that you're trying to fulfil there, is it a lot of research-based work that will be part of that? For example, data science is a great one. Some of those are very research-based roles, PhD level research-based roles, and therefore it's an essential qualification that you must have. However, the students that we have are master's students, so they're not really required to do that. It's more production level data science, and actually there are data scientists in the network that are extremely good statistical people that have also gone into data science roles. So, I think it does depend on you as an organisation. If you believe that the attributes are there, the attitude's right, the competencies are there in that individual and they can do that job, then I don't think it matters in that respect. Sometimes it's a cultural thing, because sometimes as an organisation will say you have to have a degree to join our business, and actually by employing people that don't have degrees, that could be detrimental to the culture when you try and employ in the future. And I know a few organisations like that. Lady there. Thank you.
Hi. So I work for a company that does technical upskilling for people in data science, and I was really interested by the stats you gave, and I was wondering if you had more insight as to why company or organizations are sometimes a bit afraid, or that budget doesn't go towards them upskilling data analysts, data scientists, marketing analysts, HR analysts. Like you said, data is everywhere. Yeah. And I'm just wondering what your insight would be as to what the thought process is there, why that budget isn't going towards the employees.
I think there's two things, actually. I think it's a great question. I think the first thing is that they don't know their capabilities in the organisation. So therefore upskilling or investing in training could be something where they don't really know where the impact's going to be. It could be something that the market says that you need to do, or, and therefore a lot of boards won't go for that. I think if you don't know what you're going to get back from that, then I think it's very, very difficult. So therefore it's harder to get a budget signed off for training in technology they don't really know that much about, or an initiative that an organisation's taking to try and meet its corporate goals. That's why I think there's challenge in raising budget for upskilling and training. And also not having a really, really close enough understanding of what's actually going on in the industry and what's available to them. If you don't really know that actually you could change, you could upskill business analysts into data analysis with a few changes and some tooling, much easier than going to the market to recruit data analysts. Then you're gonna struggle and you're gonna miss an opportunity. Is my view. Julian.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, I think part of it is that the data leaders haven't partnered sufficiently with the HR department to find where that training budget is and ring-fence that training budget. So strong data leaders will do that, and they won't say, the budget needs to be cut here. They'll say, no, my people are important, I need to continue to invest in their development, and they'll do that in partnership with the finance director, because they'll say we're going to save on external costs, or we're going to create more value because we're going to have better skilled people, and they'll partner with the HR team as well. So they'll have a alliance around the top table. That's really where you need to get to, and I think it's a leadership issue for the senior data leaders in the business as well.
Hello, Chris. Oh.
Hi. Just a quick question. You mentioned something about, I think you said 2020, that the requests for data roles will go up by a certain percentage. What do you think about the data analyst bit of the data role? Do you think it's something that would be in that space as well? Or do you think it's just going to be data scientists and data engineers in terms of job roles?
Absolutely, data analysis. From what we're seeing right at the moment, there's a huge demand for data analysis because it's actually a quick way of getting some good insight from what it is in your teams, because you can actually analyse the data and actually, if you're good at storytelling, you can provide some insight to the board and make decisions. So no, I would have said if I was going to break that out in percentages, I may have said 25-30% of that growth will be in analysis. Absolutely, it's definitely not just about data science from what we've seen this year, whereas the last couple of years it was like the sexiest job of the 20th century, etc. So I think there'll be a big proportion of that there, definitely.
Hi, thank you. You mentioned at the start really looking from within, internally, and looking at competencies. Do you recommend an industry standard data competency framework? Is there one out there where you can map your resources against where they are in their careers? Similar industries in IT, the BCS has got Sophia,
yes.
But is there one lacking for data?
I definitely think there's one lacking for data. And also, I think Julian will actually probably be able to answer that quite well. But it also depends on what you're, in what focused way or what direction you're taking from a data perspective. But actually, most competency frameworks that we've seen or we've ever helped organisations build, they've all been bespoke and tailored to that organisation, because there's a lot of other things going in there, like culture and how the business works and does that fit and tie in. I think it's the better way to do it is to do your own one rather than. If there's lots of frameworks you can follow, but then tailor them to the needs of your business, and it will make more sense to the people. Chris.
Hi. Yeah, far be it from me to sit here and not advance an opinion. So I was going back to what you were talking about in terms of generalist recruiters and keywords and all that kind of stuff. So now we're getting to the point where AI is being used to sift applications, and I'm looking for a job. And don't tell anyone I said that. But so I'm looking at I'm looking at advice on the internet and to do with this aspect of how it is that people are recruiting now, and it's kind of like I've got to relearn how to apply for a job.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about not using keyword searches and trying to be more sophisticated with who it is and that you deal with and what it is that you're doing to attract people, do you have any kind of thing to say about how this whole AI process of sifting would function, given that we're big data, of course? So.
Well, most tools, Nick might have an opinion on this as well, but most tools that are doing any kind of job matching or recruitment are keyword based, pretty much, right? So I'm going to go back to actually branding, because how you sell yourself, and most people, the geniuses in the world, have never been really that good at actually selling themselves, hence why sometimes the cleverest people are the lowest paid, because they actually can't sell what they do. So it's about brand. If there are tools out there like these AI tools, and we've seen some of them, so some people try to sell them to us to say, use this fantastic tool to do all your skills matching, but actually, it is about what you put on there. So if you're looking for opportunities, then you need to brand yourself and actually use all of the keywords so that you're picked up on all the search engines and things like that. But ultimately, what's going to happen is about how you sell what you do and what value you can bring to an organisation. A lot of conversations with generalist recruiters will be, tell me about your skills. Okay, so you got those 5 skills and you've done that there, and this is your industry background. But not many recruiters, unless they're specialists, will say, tell me about the value that you brought to your organisation that you last worked for. What value did you bring there? What was the project you worked on? And give me a statement about that. Who else can I talk to about how good you are? Stuff like that is what actually sells an individual when they're looking for an opportunity. LinkedIn's a classic example of this, because I don't know if people know, but we use LinkedIn Recruiter, which is a specific license for recruitment individuals, which opens up the whole network, like everybody on LinkedIn basically, and they will use keyword searches. But an industry specialist recruiter versus a generalist is going to have a completely different look or a completely different idea of the profiles they're being presented with. And if you're selling yourself properly on your profiles, then you'll get picked up in the right vein. So I do agree with you, though. if you just come into the market, it's really difficult to go and find a new job. There is an art to it, and you do need to, there is a step-by-step guide, but I would speak to people that you know about how do I go and do this, and we run workshops and things about what's the best way to market yourself when you're looking for opportunity, because we don't actually see you guys as an audience, as clients and candidates, even though I asked who was recruiting and who was looking. You're a network of people, because on Friday you could be hiring people, and on Monday you could be looking for a new opportunity. You're actually still the same individual, and that's really how you should be engaging with the market. But understanding what people do, you should have an understanding of the industry. I hope that answers that. Bit long-winded. Anybody else got any questions? Are we all good? Well, hopefully you found that useful. Thanks for listening. Do appreciate it, and have a good day. Enjoy the rest of the show. Thank you.